the forgotten ancient battery that could power our future. It begins with a jar, a simple clay vessel, half buried in the sands of Iraq, silent, unassuming, forgotten by time. Yet inside this jar lies a mystery that has haunted scientists, historians, and dreamers for nearly a century. Some call it a fraud, others believe it is the oldest battery in human history, and if true, it means our ancestors may have been experimenting with electricity nearly 2,000 years before the modern world rediscovered it. Tonight, we dive into the shadows of forgotten science. We trace the story of the Baghdad Battery, a humble artifact that could connect ancient ingenuity with the technological revolutions of today. As you listen, imagine the soft glow of lamplight in an ancient Mesopotamian workshop. Imagine hands roughened by time, placing copper inside clay, adding iron, and pouring a liquid that fizzes faintly, releasing a power no one could see, but everyone could feel. This is not just archaeology, it is a meditation on human curiosity, on how ideas lost in time may hold the keys to our future. Part 1. Discovery and Mystery. Chapter 1. The Unearthed Jar. The year is 1938. In the ancient village of Kujut Rabu, near modern-day Baghdad, workers uncover something strange. Among ruins that once belonged to the Parthian Empire, an empire stretching from Persia to Mesopotamia, a small clay jar is found. It is about the size of a man's hand, no more than 15 centimeters tall. At first glance, it seems ordinary, like any storage container for oil or wine. But the archaeologists notice something unusual. Inside the jar, a copper cylinder rests snug against the inner walls, and within that cylinder, an iron rod protrudes, sealed with asphalt to keep it in place. A jar within a jar, metal inside clay, purpose unknown. The discovery is catalogued, but it takes years before its true strangeness captures the imagination. Chapter 2. The Strange Design. The design is too deliberate to be an accident. The copper cylinder is rolled carefully, fitted neatly inside. The iron rod shows signs of corrosion as though it once reacted with something. The asphalt seal is watertight, preventing liquid from leaking out. When reconstructed, the jar seems to function as a sealed container, capable of holding an acidic solution like vinegar, lemon juice, or wine. And when liquid is added, something remarkable happens. The metals begin to react. The jar produces a faint but measurable electric current. A clay pot, a copper cylinder, an iron rod. Together, they form a primitive galvanic cell, what we would today call a battery. Chapter 3. Speculations begin. The discovery shocks the academic world. Could the ancients really have built an electric device? Some scholars speculate wildly. Perhaps these batteries powered lamps in Mesopotamian temples. Perhaps they were used for mysterious rituals, giving priests the power to shock initiates as proof of divine power. Perhaps they were used in alchemy, attempting to transmute metals. Others remain cautious. A single jar is not enough evidence. Without clear records or writings, how can we know its purpose? And yet, the shape, the construction, the materials, they whisper of intention. They whisper of knowledge that should not have existed in that time. Chapter 4. First Experiments. In 1938, Wilhelm Koenig, an Austrian archaeologist and director of the Baghdad Museum, takes a closer look. He proposes that the jar is not just a container, it is a battery. He publishes his theory, igniting debates across the world. Later, scientists replicate the design. They pour vinegar inside, the iron rod corrodes, the copper reacts, and to their amazement, the jar produces between 0.5 volt and 1 volt of electricity. A humble spark, a whisper of power, enough to tingle the skin. Enough to coat small objects with a thin layer of metal through electroplating. The Baghdad Battery, it seems, works, but what was it used for? That remains the question. Chapter 5. Skeptics Speak. Not everyone is convinced. Some argue that the jar was simply a storage container for sacred scrolls. Others believe it was a vessel for papyrus or religious texts, with the copper acting as a protective lining. Still others claim the battery effect was nothing but coincidence, a byproduct of corrosion, not a deliberate invention. Without documentation, without records, skepticism grows. But even as skeptics dismiss the idea, the jar continues to spark imaginations. For whether or not it was truly used as a battery, the fact remains, it could have been, and sometimes the line between possibility and reality is thinner than we think. Part 2. Ancient Science and Context. Chapter 6. A World of Forgotten Inventions. To understand the Baghdad Battery, we must step back. The ancient world was full of inventions that seemed impossible for their time. The Antikythera mechanism, a bronze machine from ancient Greece, predicted eclipses and tracked the movements of the planets. Roman engineers built aqueducts that stretched for hundreds of miles, carrying fresh water with perfect precision. In China, inventors crafted seismographs to detect earthquakes long before Europe even imagined such a device. The Baghdad Battery, if truly a source of electricity, would be another of these wonders, a piece of knowledge that flickered briefly, then was lost, waiting for rediscovery thousands of years later. Chapter 7. What electricity meant to the ancients. But how would the ancients have understood electricity? They would not have spoken of electrons, circuits, or volts. Instead, they may have seen it as divine fire, a hidden force of the gods. Lightning storms split the skies above Mesopotamia. Static sparks leapt from amber rubbed against fur. The world offered glimpses of electricity, raw, untamed, mysterious. Perhaps to hold that force in one's hand, even just a faint tingle of it, would have been nothing short of magic. Chapter 8. Possible Uses, Ritual and Healing. So what could they have used it for? One theory suggests religious ritual. Imagine priests demonstrating the touch of the gods, placing a hand on a sacred object that suddenly stung with hidden power. The followers, awed and fearful, would see it as proof of divine presence. Another theory suggests medicine. In the Greco-Roman world, electric fish were sometimes used to numb pain or treat headaches. Could Mesopotamian healers have used the battery's faint shocks in a similar way? A primitive electrotherapy lost to history. Or perhaps they were simply experimenting, guided by curiosity with no clear purpose other than to explore. Chapter 9. The Mystery of Electroplating. One of the most intriguing theories is that the Baghdad Battery was used for electroplating. Electroplating is the process of coating an object in a thin layer of metal using electricity. With a battery and a simple solution of metal salts, even a craftsman 2,000 years ago could have gilded small objects with a shimmer of gold or silver. Some artifacts from Mesopotamia and nearby regions bear strange, thin coatings of precious metals, coatings that, to modern eyes, look suspiciously like electroplating. Could these be the fingerprints of ancient electricity? The evidence is debated, but the possibility lingers, haunting the edges of history. Chapter 10. Knowledge Lost to Time. And then, silence. The Baghdad Battery does not appear in other texts, drawings, or records. No manuals, no guides, no written instructions. If it was indeed a battery, then the knowledge either belonged to a very small group or was lost entirely when empires fell and libraries burned. Imagine how fragile knowledge is. A single war, a single fire, a single forgotten scroll can erase centuries of progress. The Baghdad Battery may be less a mystery and more a symbol of how easily human discovery can vanish into dust. A reminder that what we think of as modern breakthroughs may only be rediscoveries of wisdom long forgotten. Part 3. Modern Rediscovery and Experiments. Chapter 11. Discovery in 1938. In 1938, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm König unearthed the strange clay jar near Baghdad. At first, it looked ordinary, just another ceramic vessel among thousands. But when König examined it closely, he noticed the copper cylinder inside and the iron rod that fit neatly within it. It was too precise, too engineered, too deliberate. He published his findings, suggesting it could be a kind of battery. The idea was shocking. Electricity in ancient Mesopotamia. The discovery would ignite debates that have lasted for nearly a century. Chapter 12. The First Replications. Curiosity spread quickly. Researchers around the world decided to test König's idea. By filling replicas of the Baghdad Battery with grape juice or vinegar, acidic liquids, they found that the device could indeed produce a small electric current, a fraction of a volt, tiny, weak, almost laughable by modern standards, but undeniably electricity. The experiments proved one thing. Whether or not the ancients knew it, this jar could function as a battery. Chapter 13. The Debate of Purpose. But here is the problem. Just because it could work doesn't mean it was designed for that. Some argue it was simply a storage vessel and the metal pieces served some forgotten non-electrical function. Others insist that the resemblance to a galvanic cell is too striking to ignore. For decades, scholars have gone back and forth. Was it truly a tool of science, or are we projecting our modern imagination onto an artifact that had an entirely different purpose? Chapter 14. Reenacting Ancient Electroplating. In the 1970s, researchers at the General Electric Labs decided to push the theory further. They connected multiple Baghdad Battery replicas together, creating a small battery bank. Then they attempted electroplating, coating a piece of silver with gold. To their amazement, it worked. The experiment suggested that if the ancients had linked multiple jars, they could indeed have gilded jewelry or sacred objects. Imagine, thousands of years ago, craftsmen may have harnessed invisible forces to make ordinary metals gleam like treasure. Chapter 15. A modern lens on ancient curiosity. Even today, we argue over the true purpose of the Baghdad Battery. Was it practical, ritualistic, or accidental? Perhaps the real significance lies not in what it was used for, but in what it represents. Human beings, in every age, reach for forces they do not fully understand. They experiment, they tinker, they push boundaries, even when they cannot yet explain the science. The Baghdad Battery may not be the world's first power source in the way we imagine it, but it is proof of something deeper, that curiosity is timeless, and that the urge to capture nature's hidden powers has always been a part of who we are. Part 4. Modern Technology and Ancient Parallels. Chapter 16. The DNA of all batteries. Strip away the fancy cases, the sleek designs, and the marketing. At its core, every battery today still relies on the same principle. Two metals separated by an electrolyte exchanging charges. Lithium-ion batteries that power your smartphone. Massive grid-scale batteries that store renewable energy. Even the battery in a child's toy. They all share the same skeleton as the Baghdad Battery. The ancients may not have known the math behind it, but they stumbled onto a formula that echoes through every modern device we own. Chapter 17. A phone in a clay jar. Think of it this way. Your smartphone, the glowing slab in your pocket, is powered by a highly evolved descendant of a clay jar from Mesopotamia. Inside both are metals and fluids, dancing electrons, and a pulse of stored energy. The difference is scale, refinement, and knowledge. The Baghdad Battery is like a stone wheel compared to today's electric cars, primitive but recognizable, a bridge across millennia. Chapter 18: Ancient Power, Modern Parallels. The story of the Baghdad Battery is not unique. Over and over, history shows us glimpses of scientific ideas that appear too early. The Antikythera mechanism, a mechanical computer centuries ahead of its time. Chinese seismoscopes that detected earthquakes long before modern seismology. Indian texts describing concepts eerily close to atomic theory. The Baghdad Battery joins this pantheon, artifacts that whisper, "We have always been more advanced than we think." Chapter 19: The Lost Knowledge Hypothesis. Some scholars and fringe thinkers go even further. They argue that ancient civilizations possessed knowledge we have since lost, that the Baghdad Battery wasn't a fluke, but a surviving piece of a forgotten science. Could entire systems of energy storage have existed long before modern times? Could temples and workshops have glowed faintly with electrical power, long erased from history? We may never know, but the possibility is tantalizing. Chapter 20: The Eternal Curiosity of Humans. When we look at the Baghdad Battery, we're not just looking at clay, copper, and iron. We're looking at the same spark that drives today's scientists to split atoms or explore quantum computing. A spark of curiosity, a desire to capture invisible forces. In that sense, the Baghdad Battery is not a relic. It is a mirror, showing us that the human urge to invent, to tinker, to push the boundaries of knowledge has always been there and always will be. Part 5: Future Lessons and Speculative Science. Chapter 21: Ancient Sparks, Future Grids. Imagine if we treated every ancient artifact not just as a museum piece, but as a prototype. The Baghdad Battery could inspire new ways of thinking about simple, cheap, and accessible energy storage. In a world struggling with energy inequality, perhaps clay jars and natural electrolytes could once again play a role, not as curiosities, but as tools, as small-scale solutions in communities where high-tech batteries are out of reach. Sometimes the future needs us to look backward. Chapter 22: Biobatteries and Living Power. Scientists today are experimenting with biobatteries, devices that generate electricity using organic matter. Everything from algae to human sweat has been tested. In a strange way, this loops back to the Baghdad Battery, a crude system using vinegar or fruit juice to create current. What if the ancients were already toying with nature's ability to power technology? And what if we are only now catching up to their intuition? Chapter 23: Archaeological Energy Experiments. Some researchers believe we should retest ancient sites for electrical signatures. Imagine if temples once housed networks of simple energy devices. Imagine if entire rituals were powered by controlled sparks. Archaeology may not just uncover broken pottery, but fragments of an ancient science we have yet to decode. And if true, the Baghdad Battery may be only the beginning. Chapter 24: Batteries Beyond Earth. Here's a final thought experiment. If humans in 200 BC were already experimenting with electricity, then what of civilizations elsewhere? Perhaps alien worlds also began with clay, metal, and liquid. Perhaps every intelligent species starts with a jar of power before building engines, grids, and space stations. The Baghdad Battery might not just be a story of human history. It could be the universal first spark of civilization. Chapter 25: The Closing Current. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, remember this. A simple clay jar, pulled from the sands of Mesopotamia, carries a story of human ambition, a story of reaching into the invisible, of coaxing nature into giving up its secrets, of lighting the darkness with ingenuity. The Baghdad Battery is not just an artifact, it is a heartbeat across time. And who knows, perhaps the same spark that flickered in that jar still flickers within us, guiding us to the next great discovery.